Shabbat Shalom, Hanukkah Sameach. We are in the fourth day of Hanukkah. I hope that all of you have been lighting your candles and showing your light to the rest of the world. That is a very important time of the year for us, and I think for humanity, because I have my own theories about Christmas, and in many ways I think Christmas is a continuation of the Festival of Lights of our ancestors started, and they continue. The only thing is they put a little more cosmetics and things like that. But and because of that, let me read something from Rabbi Professor Yehuda Elixir. He's not any longer with us. He wrote for Shabbat Hanukkah, and at this time of the year. And I'm going to read only a little portion of what he wrote. He said, he's talking about the family of Jacob. And you know how they go through so many situations and difficulties, and there are so much struggles. And then he said, the encounter with a group that they declare themselves the true heirs of Judaism and its Torah can perhaps sharpen the questions and shed light on the issue each year in the same season when the youth read Vayeshev, Miketz, and Vayigash, when they struggle to understand the nature of Jacob's son, jealousy, selling Joseph to slavery, and non-recognition. The Christians celebrate the birth of the person who they claim to be the Son of God as well as God himself. That person is totally perfect beyond words. He knows no sin. Our scriptures, the eternal, what is called by the Christians Old Testament, teach us in contrast what was later put succinctly in Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon's prayer in Kohelet. What it says, for there is no man who does not sin. 1 King 8:46, Kohelet 7:20. Why I start with this introduction to the parasha of this week? Because we are in Miketz, we are in Hanukkah, we need to interpret also history in the way that needs to be seen, not in the way that we have inherited, not in the way of the legends and of the dreams or things like that. Sometimes, when something happened in the past, with the time, we change it and we make it look better than what it really was. And sometimes we go over the sufferings and the struggles, and we look at the victories or at the end of any saga. But let me tell you, in the Torah, what we learn is from the beginning to the end. We learn about our struggles. We learn about our trying to become peoplehood, and then finally arriving there. And even when you arrive there, it's not the end, it's only a new beginning. And we are constantly in that struggle. We are conquering the struggles, we are going through the struggles, and finally we arrive to a certain point, and when we think that we arrive, we need to start again. You know? And this is something that we need to start learning from the scriptures, and we need trying to learn from everything that we have been learning. Now, only as a matter of making you aware of something. You know, I was constantly asking you to try to avoid being religious and to try to be more open to have a relationship with our Creator, blessed be His name. You know, religion, I have told you in many ways, many times, and in different words, the religion, believe me or not, take you away from the true God. Now, this statement, of course, has caused me a lot of problems with a lot of people. Has caused and has caused me problems with the other religion that is very popular here in Canada, who is Christianity. Even though that pretty soon we're going to say that one of the more popular religions is going to be Islam, the way that we are going. But this is the way that we are. And to me, all religions maybe a struggle of trying to give you a good direction in life, or they want to show you something good points and bad points, and then what you need to do is to be open to listen, to read, and whatever. But as our Rabbi Shaul told us, you know, we need to choose what is right, to choose what is good, and to get rid of those things that are not good for anything. You know, and instead to start arguing about I am right and you are wrong. That won't take us anywhere. Some of you sometimes you get upset with me because I do not argue. I am not a type of apologetical person. I do not like to discuss or to try to impose you my way of thinking. Totally the contrary. I try to help you to think for yourself. And then you do your own searching. You do your looking for and trying to find the truth. You know, our Messiah Yeshua, when he said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, you know, 99% of people totally misunderstood the saying. And I say that even today, when you read commentaries, and Christian commentaries, theologians and everything else, they're talking about a truth that means a cognitive truth in the sense of definition is an Aristotelian understanding, it's a Greek understanding, you know, it's a definition. And we are struggling with defining things. As I have been teaching you through these years about the Messiah and how we try to define it instead of trying to understand it, what our Creator, God, blessed be His name, trying to teach and to do. Well, in this essence, you know, to find the truth will be to have an encounter with a living God. And when you have an encounter with God, it's God who comes to you and He opens your mind, your heart, your everything, and then you start experiencing this relationship that is very important. Once you have an encounter with God, then you start realizing about yourself first. Because the first step about any encounter with our Creator is to learn about yourself. You will be surprised how many few people they know pretty well themselves. You know, we have trying to protect ourselves in such a way where we do not allow criticism, we do not allow any type of intelligent analysis of ourselves. You know, no, we do not allow ourselves to be introspective. And you know what is very interesting? And sometimes people do not understand this. The word tefillah, what we translated in vernacular English, we translate it as prayer. Really what it means is introspection. To really look within yourself when you approach God. Now, the only way that you can approach God is that first of all you need to examine yourself. Because if you do not examine yourself and you do not see what there is in you, there is wasting of time. You know, you are going through the circles, you are going through the movements, but you're not really doing what exactly He's asking you to do. Why it's so important to know yourself? Because in that way, you can be your self-critic, and you can honestly say, these are areas that I need to change, these are areas that I need to improve, these are areas that are not good for me, these are areas that are destroying me. You know? I want to give you a simple case. You know, I worked for a long time when I was in the United States in a special setting, and they call it a center of chemical dependency unit. Basically was for people who were addicted to any type of things. I call it thing because now addiction is not only drugs. There are a lot of types of, you can be addicted to gambling, you can be addicted to sex, you can be addicted to liquor, you can be addicted to many other things, you know, drugs and things like that. The addiction is very I was trying to, when I was working there as a counselor, I learned many things about counseling. There are many wonderful programs to help us to grow up in this area. But let me tell you this. The first step for any person to start in the way of recovering is interesting. To renew the person was to acknowledge that that person had a problem. Look at the simple thing looks like, but it's the most difficult. Most of the people, I work with a lot of people with alcoholic problems, and one of the greatest problems with alcoholism is about to the person recognize this alcoholic. That is the most difficult part, believe me or not. So everybody, it's obvious for anybody, oh, this is an alcoholic. Why? Because he drinks all every day and every day he's drunk. For you that see the person, it's very easy. For the person who is in that problem, he or she doesn't think they're alcoholic because they are always say, I can stop whenever I want to. And that's a big lie. They cannot stop for themselves. It's not possible. Until when they acknowledge that they has a problem. This time, what I need to talk to you about this time of the year, and it's very important, and especially in this portion of Miketz, only to bring you from the last portion that we have been talking, especially about Vayeshev, the last week. I told you that here, our Creator is presenting for the first time this idea about the two Mashiach, that we, of course, is not clear, it's not defined, it's not elaborated. We see it through the time. We need to understand that. But he presented the picture of Joseph and the picture of Judah, the two leaders after Jacob in Israel. And we are going to see one thing that is interesting. I am adding this for you to put a little bit of thinking on this thought. Getting ahead of time, almost at the end in chapter 49, when Jacob blessed his children, it's interesting that he's going to make Judah the leader of Israel and not his son Joseph, who supposedly needed to be the leader because he was the viceroy, he was the stronger, he was the most capable in that moment. The question is, why he chose Judah instead of Joseph? And basically he divided the leadership. And believe me or not, because of that, we had later on the division of the two empires, North and South. The empire of the South, the empire of Judah, the empire of the North, the empire of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. And then really was another division. And we are going to see these pictures over and over again. Now, why our Creator didn't do anything right? No? That's one question that many of us have. No? Why, for one moment, didn't make anything right? He started with everything wrong. Adam and Eve and Heva, they committed a mistake. Then Cain and Abel, they committed a mistake. Then all these giants, and then Noah, and then this, and then this, and then this. When he want to do something right? You see, this is the problem about many of us, that it's very easy to blame others for our own faults. We look at the others, we don't look at ourselves. And you can see here a very important teaching. Okay, it's very important in this thing that our Creator has given to us, to each one of us, free will. This is so important that you and I, we need to understand and to respect. Because what our Creator is saying to you, you are now on your own. Now you are going to make your own decisions. Now you need to look from right and wrong. Now you need to make your own way. And this is, I am here, of course, he never abandoned us. But it is up to us in that responsibility. Other religions teach you that it's impossible for you, okay, to try to do anything good. You know? And many times that's what I just read in Kohelet 7:20 or in 1 Kings 8:46, that for there is no man who does not sin. They say, you see, there's no any man that is perfect. That's true. There's no man perfect. You know? And this is what will make us good. Why? Because being not perfect means that there is a lot of room for improvement. You know, do you remember I said not long time ago, I said there are two kinds of people that we want to have in mind. The person that is always perfect and the person who commits mistakes. Who is the person who learns more and faster? Okay? The person who commits mistakes. Why? Because committing mistakes is when you get perfect. Because you're trying to avoid later on to do it again. But the person that all the time does the same thing over and over without committing any mistake, what that person has learned? Only to be mechanical. But I cannot think for themselves. And this is something that our Creator gave us to us as a gift. Free will. It's not interesting. Many of us, in certain religion, we condemn that, and it is totally the opposite. It's a blessing. But what happens when you abuse that? You get in trouble. You get out. Well, let me go back to this parasha and to put it together with Hanukkah, because we are in Hanukkah, because it's important. First of all, we say in Miketz that really there is the encounter of the 10 brothers of Joseph with him. And in the first encounter, here is the elevation. First of all, this parasha start with the elevation of Joseph. After going through all sufferings, going through all these moments of difficulties, he is elevated. And what is interesting is you put it in parallel with Judah. Judah start going down and Joseph can start going up. At the beginning, Judah was up and Joseph was down. And now it's changing the balance and it's going in different directions. These two candidates for giving us the idea of the Mashiach, okay, they play an important role in the developing of Israel and what Israel is going to be. With all the nation, with all the situation, with all the shortcomings. Here, when Israel, in the case of the 10 brothers, they go to meet the viceroy of Egypt. In this case, Joseph, who is covered up with Egyptian garment. And totally, they did not recognize their own brother as one of them. But Joseph immediately recognized them. Now, Joseph never ever, in that process, revealed himself. Totally the contrary. He even utilized interpreters in order to talk to them. That is to give it a double whammy, they call it. Because not only they couldn't recognize physically, but they didn't hear him talking. Maybe they could hear his voice and say, they sound like a Joseph, or the mannerism when he sing, he was dressed totally like an Egyptian. And this, as Egyptian, he was almost divinized. He almost was divine. This is very important picture in this moment to understand. Okay, he was the direct successor of the Pharaoh, who was the father of Egypt, and here was his son, also divine. It's not interesting. Pictures speak louder than many explanations that we can say. The Gentiles, the Egyptians, saw Pharaoh as their God, because that was their beliefs system. And then, if Pharaoh had given to this son that he has adopted, he knows his own son, but it's an adopted son, and he has passed him the hoopy, you know what we call it, magician art of, now you are my representative and you are like me. He said that, you know, when he instated Stephanat Paneach, the name that's given to him, means somebody who discover or reveal dreams. That's the idea in the Egyptian language. And what is the point that I'm trying to make here? Look at the position that Joseph has, that the rest of the world that was coming because of the great famine that has developed in that area of the world, all the countries of the world that will go in there to ask for food, and he will need it to sell it. When he recognized his brothers, he basically is going to play with them again. Looks like a game. Many questions has come through this narration of this portion of the scripture. The first question that everybody will ask, I imagine, it is, why Joseph, who loved so much his father, after being ascended to this high position, why he never ever tried to get in touch with his father? You know, there are so many midrashim that you can not believe. And if I try to tell you all the things that our dear sages and rabbis tell us, would be too much. But to make it very simple is this, you know. He first of all didn't know that his father was alive still. And you're going to see that by how many times he is asking them, is your father alive? Okay, that is going to give us an idea. Is your father alive? Okay, now, the next thing that we need to see here is why also didn't approach them, because he didn't know if his father was alive. He didn't know about his other brother Benjamin, and his other brother was still against the children of Rachel. He was one and Benjamin the other, because it was very obvious that his father had made a choice who they were going to be the most beloved. No, he didn't want to put anything there until he was totally aware of the situation. And what was the spiritual situation of his brothers? He wanted to know if they really had repented, if they really had dealt with their sin against him, and how he was going to deal with it. It's interesting that every little passage that we see in the interaction between him and his brothers, we are going to see how he, very meticulous, start little by little getting back to them, but not in a sense of vindictiveness, but in a sense of you need to learn about what you did, because what we call midah keneged midah, measure by measure. You know, you need to, you're going to learn to recognize what you did first, because before we can bring you all together as a nation. Secondly, here is a very interesting idea that came from a midrashim that I like it to understand. Even in the Torah, it's no saying explicitly, but it's very obvious that Jacob talked with his children, and especially with two of them, with Judah and with Joseph. In this case, I mentioned to you last week this idea that Tamar, you remember Tamara, wanted to have a child for Judah. Why? Because already Judah has already told her that how important was the lineage, and they were forming a new nation. And she was excited about to participate in keeping that lineage. That was the reason that when she was so into it, giving a descendant from Judah. No? Now, the same thing sure that Jacob has told Joseph about this idea that his brother, God had been always having among all the brothers one special. In his case, his father committed a mistake, choosing the wrong one. This time he wanted to be sure that as a father, he was choosing the right person who was going to lead the lineage of Israel, the lineage of Jacob, to form this new nation. And that person, the most prepared, the most equipped to do that, who was? No?
Joseph.
Joseph. Thank you. I can see that you're not following. I know. It's okay. In this case was Joseph. That's the reason that he dressed him with special rank and all those things. And it's interpreted by the brothers as a certain type of jealousy. And that comes all this problem. Well, saying that both has an idea about there was something special about them. Now Joseph needed to be sure now in the position that he was that his brother had changed. And how he's going to know that his brother had changed? Well, first of all, they need to go to a process of test. And you're going to see there are tests that he put in the way. In the first encounter, basically they are going out and then he put a goblet of silver, in the pocket, and they say, the first thing is, I'm sorry, the first is you are spies. And you're doing this wrong, and we are going you are lying to me. You say that you have another brother, that is Benjamin, and until you don't bring send one to bring your brother Benjamin, and then he changed it, he said totally the contrary. Okay, I'm going to let you go all 9, and I'm going to keep 1. Guess what? Who do you think that he kept? Not only and no less than Shimeon. Shimeon sounds like a Shimon Peter sometimes, big mouth, look like, because he was already, we knew that he and his dear brother Levi, but they were very strong and they could kill anybody. And give you the inference that when they said, let's kill Jacob, let's kill Joseph, the one idea could be from Shimeon or from Levi. When they both were together, they were problem to anybody. Then what he does, he's going to separate the 2 brothers, and he's going to keep the one that say, let's kill him, But and then he sent the other one. The 9 go back. Jacob is happy, not too upset that they had kept Shimeon. Why Shimeon is not my favorite, and he sometimes deserves to be in that situation. But then they told him that the only way that they could go back was if it's important, they bring their youngest son, Benjamin. Then he said, no, forget about it, I'm going to do it, pass the time, and then the food that they brought back went over, finished, and they are still now starving to death. And Jacob needed to make a solution about we need to go back for more food. Immediately, Reuben, who wants to go back to be the firstborn, to take the leadership, he gave it a very brilliant solution. Don't worry, Daddy. I take with you Benjamin. And if I don't bring you back, you kill 2 of my children. Very smart solution. How are you going to solve that situation? Okay? And then, what Reuben is offering Jacob is, not only you're going to lose 2 more children, but I'm going to lose also my 2 grandchildren. What father or grandfather would say, oh, that sounds okay. Then finally, he said no again. Saying that, he always showing favoritism on Benjamin against his other brothers. He keeps creating the same problem of jealousy with the brothers. I want that you analyze the picture. Next, and the moment comes to the moment that basically now they need to go, because if they don't go, Now, he needs to make a decision. And he said to them, go and bring us food again. He go back and ask the request. And at this moment, we are going to see Judah's leadership. And Judah, in a very nice way, as better that he can say with respect to his father, he said, you already know that we cannot go to this man and present ourselves without Benjamin, because he already told us, if we don't bring Benjamin, he even won't see us. He won't reject us. Besides, we have they have been put the silver, the extra money in the pockets, and they needed to give all the money back. And then Jacob said, finally, very reluctantly, Judah said, I will be the guarantor of Benjamin. Is Benjamin, that thing come, I will be responsible for it. I will take it like my own sin. It's interesting the way that I mentioned this. It's my own fault, you know? And that's what he's saying to his father is, I will have the same pain that you have, that you're losing your children. When Jacob looked like he didn't have more options and needed to send it. And he goes. Now, this idea about the silver, you remember in chapter 37, verse 28, there is a portion there that Joseph was sold to, first of all, to the Midianite. The Midianite gave it to Ishmael for 20 pieces of silver. Now, I mentioned to you that the brother, they really didn't sell the brother because he was taken by the Midianites out of the port, and then the Midianites sold it to the Ishmaelites for that price. But that was the price that was paid by the Ishmaelites for Joseph. And the brother knew that to sell the brother got money. We don't see anymore what they did with the money or they received the money in the narration. But we see is that he was sold for 20 pieces of silver. And we don't know who got the money. That's the reason that area is very obscure. It's not very clear. But one thing it is that Joseph knew that he was sold for 20 pieces of silver. To whom was given the money, we do not know. But he said, they are going to pay, and they want to need to give me back the money. You know, in certain way, they need to pay for that. They need to recognize that they sold me. No? Then he keep putting the silver in the pocket. Why? Because every time that they come back, they need to acknowledge something. In this process, suddenly they realize God is upset with us because he is reckoning us with what we did to our brother. Interestingly enough, they are talking among themselves in front of his brother, and who they didn't know that he could understand them speaking, because he was interpreting the moment by himself, and he didn't react. Joseph cried several times and needed to hold those feelings. But why he was doing all these intentions at the end? Because there was something very important for Joseph. Joseph needed to acknowledge, to recognize that his brother had changed. And what was going to be the final test? The final test was two things. First of all, that they acknowledged that they had done something wrong. Interestingly, they were talking about that they were receiving retribution for their behavior. That's at the beginning of Teshuvah. I know, interesting. This is the beginning of God renewing you. And the second thing, he wanted to be sure that there was not any longer animosity against the children of Rachel. In the next parasha in Vayegash, we are going to see the precious interaction between Judah and Joseph, and the discourse of Judah is so good. He could be a good lawyer, and the way that he presents his case, and how he introduces what he does. And this is the moment in which we are going to see the revelation of Joseph to his brothers. And instead to leave you, instead to finish, because I don't want to give you the ending, even though you already know, but I want to give you something ahead for you to think. Because we are in this time of Hanukkah, and like I said to you, Hanukkah has served to borrow for Christianity what I would call it Christmas. Okay? There is no coincidence about the 25th of December with the 25th of Kislev. You know, there is too many things together. It's no coincidence that Hanukkah is called the Festival of Lights, and Christmas now is full of lights. It's no coincidence that it means about rededication and to start a new life, a new beginning, you know. And this is a birth. In Christianity talk about the birth of Messiah. And all of those things has a parallel, but at the same time has a disruption, and it goes everyone to their own side. In Hanukkah, the most important thing is to understand that when we get away from God, blessed be His name, when we get away from the Torah, we destroy ourselves. And we need to re-establish that relationship. If not, we are going to disappear as a people. No. One of the greatest problems that we have today in Judaism is assimilation. Now, believe it or not, it's sadly enough to tell you that almost all Jewish people have been assimilated. Okay? What do you say to me, Rabbi? You know, by the way, look at what I'm going to say, and this is going to sound terrible or maybe stuck up, or forgive me, that's not my intention. But even the ultra-Orthodox, the Hasidim, who they believe that they are the only true Jews in the world. If you examine their set of beliefs, the set of understanding, the way that they follow, 90% of what they do is pure tradition, human tradition. It's pure religion. Okay? They can be dressed all in black, and they have the pails longer than anybody else, and they can shave their head when God says not to shave your head, and they can say this is not good when God says this is good. You know, they have changed almost part of the Word of God for their own understanding, for their own tradition. And they have made a religion. So it looks like a very tight religion. You know? And the very tight religion makes you to believe that they are the only one that they do what is right. And this is the idea that put to the other Jews who are secular. And may look at the secular Jews as the ones that they are traitors, and they are the ones that they did wrong. Well, you need to understand Hanukkah in order to understand today Judaism. See, Hanukkah is a word of coming back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's a war against, you know, assimilation. What is happening in the year 140 to 142, when the Maccabees start standing up against Antiochus, Antiochus Epiphanes, some others say Antiophanies, because they put Antiochus and Epiphanes, that means the manifestation of God. That guy called himself the manifestation of God. What he did is, basically, he started recruiting. Look at this, is important. He started recruiting secular Jews to his religion, the Greek religion. They start doing what we call it the reversal surgery of circumcision among the men. Can you imagine at that time to do a reverse surgery of circumcision among the men? And they were talking about adults. You know how painful that would be and how extraordinary. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Why? Because at that time, they invented what the Greeks were very into sports. Have you heard that saying? Mente sanos, el corpore sanos?
Yes.
You know? that's totally Greek, you know. And they had what they call it the gymnasium. And the gymnasiums, what were the gymnasium? Were places where men would do different sports and compete against each other. They had something in common. All the competitors, they were naked. They fight naked. That was the idea. You know, show all your body. You were proud of your body. The body was a symbol of health and symbol of being blessed by the gods. You know, what happened? It was you fighting there, and they saw, ooh, they cut you. No. Then what they did, they needed to hide it, and in order to hide it, they did this surgery, and they became assimilated. They start getting ashamed. Okay, they were ashamed of being Jews. The religious one, the Hasidim, the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, they saw the problem that was destroying Israel. Suddenly, there is a revolt. And this revolt, Judah Maccabeus, the first son of Matayahu, you know, the Maccabees, that means the hammers, you know, they start doing the revolution, but Judas is killed. And there is a period of 7 years that they start losing. You know, people tell you that Judas defeated them. He defeated at the beginning, but he didn't triumph. He didn't rededicate the temple. Okay? Was Jonathan, his youngest brother, because all the Judah and Eliezer were killed, and then all the brothers were killed. You can read it in 1 Maccabees, chapter 9, 8 and 9, they tell you the whole story. But also you can read it in the Antiquities of Josephus, chapter 12 and 13, you're going to have all the story. But what is interesting here is that we have learned that Judah Maccabeus triumphed and he rededicated the temple. Took a long time to the point that even Jonathan was killed. His brother Johanan was killed. And the only survivor was Shimon, interestingly enough, for today's teachings. And Shimon was the one that continued this rededication of the temple, and they finally defeated the Greeks, and they had some kind of restoration of Hasmonean monarchy. Let me say this to you. What is important in this period of time is that the temple was reconsecrated, was put back for the Jewish people to have a center, and that all the people, the Israel, were coming back to him. Do you know who were the worst enemies of Jonathan, the Maccabee? They call it the converted Jews. Doesn't it sound familiar now? The worst enemies of Jonathan the Maccabee were the Jews who converted to Greek religion, and they were Hellenized, and they opposed the temple to work. Looks like history is repeating itself. We need to be careful about religions. I always tell you, the religion has never saved anybody, I won't save anybody. The only one that is creator in charge of the world is God our creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And our Messiah Yeshua is his envoy, his messenger. And he does the will of his Father, God, who is our Father. Do you know that in the Torah we are called, the Jewish people Israel, we are called the Bnei Elohim, the children of God? Then this is nothing new. But it's not that we are divine and we are not gods. What it means is that we are doing the calling of God. When at this time of the year, it is my desire that we can use the lights. And what it means lights, to give it clarity, to understand and to see more clear what God's purpose is for today. Do you know that Yeshua, the first thing that he said in the Sermon on the Mount, in his first public intervention as a teacher, it is that if we are light and we have been called to be light, we need to stand up in the top and not to hide ourselves on the top. How many of us are we light and we are no obscurity? Light is everywhere. You don't hide your light. You show it. Now, I was asking that question no long ago about kosher food and all those things. You know, I said, Rabbi, do you think we still need to be kosher and we need to do this? You know, people, and you're going to say, what are you going to kosher with this teaching? I'm going to explain to you, you're going to see the relationship. It is that God brought his people to make them different from the rest of the world. Why? Because they need to be distinguishable. Okay? Now, with the time, most of the people, when see today, today that we are living today, when they say, do you know any Jew? And the only thing that you're going to know a Jew is that has a kippah or is dressed in black. You know, black, and they are Jews. And do you know that there are more Jews that don't look like Jews? And the question is that making less Jews than the other when they are dressed like in black and white? What really needs to be a distinction? A distinction is not any longer whether we look outside. It is what it comes from us, from inside out. That's what Yeshua said. Don't worry about what you put in your mouth, but worry about what comes out of your mouth. How can you worship God with one side of your tongue and you can hate it with the other side of your tongue? Jacob speaks about the tongue. This is the time, and this is what is so important, that Miketz, this parasha, is to show you what Joseph did with his brother. He gave them a second chance, an opportunity. As God is the God of the beginning again, our God is always giving us opportunity to come back to him. And the only way that we can come back to him is what? To do teshuvah. The teshuvah is the way that we return. You know? And it's the way that we need to all together. There is a portion in 1 Kings who brought to my attention about certain things that are very interesting. 1 Kings chapter 8, something I read a little bit, but I need my small glasses. Okay. Now, Shlomo assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes of the chief fathers of the children of Israel to King Shlomo in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord from the city of David, which is Zion. Therefore, all the men of Israel assembled with the king Shlomo on the feast of the month of Etanim, which is the 7th month. So all the elders of Israel came, and the priest took up the ark. By the way, he's talking about Tishrei, and he's talking about the feast of Yom Kippur today we call it Rosh Tabernacle is John 31. Okay. Then they brought out the ark of the Lord and the tabernacle, the meeting, all the holy furnishing, and they were in the tabernacle. The priests and the Levites brought out them out. Also King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled with him were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep, oxen, that could not be counted of the number for the multitude. There was the inauguration of the temple, and there were really people all over, and there were so many things to do. Then the priest brought in the ark the covenant of the Lord to its place into the inner sanctuary of the temple, to the most holy place, under the wings of the cherubim. The Paul is standing there. I came to pass. I think I am reading. It's too much to read it to you. I'm going to go directly to 846, okay? Because I don't want to read the whole service. Let me go down. From verse 44. When your people go out to battle against their enemy, wherever you send them, and when they pray to the Lord toward the city which you have chosen, and the temple which I have built for your name, then hear in heaven their prayers and their supplications and maintain their cause. He's talking about what important is the temple in Israel. And then he said, when they, this is what is the core of this point. When they sin against you, or there is no one who does not sin, interesting, I just mentioned you, and you become angry with them and deliver them to the enemy, and they take them captive to the land of the enemy, far or near, yet when they come to themselves in the land where they were carried captive, and repent and make supplication to you in the land of those who took them captive, saying, we have sinned and done wrong, we have committed wickedness, and when they return to you with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their enemies, who led them away captive and prayed to you, you toward their land, which you gave to their fathers, the city which you have chosen, and the temple which you have built in your name, then hear in heaven your dwelling place, their prayers and their supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you, and all their transgression which they have transgressed against you, and grant them compassion before those who took them captive, that they may have compassion on them. What I'm trying to tell you, God from the beginning, have been teaching us that true forgiveness doesn't come because of the animals that you sacrifice, but the true forgiveness comes from the teshuvah that you make. Do you know that in Vayikra, Hasefer, in the book of Leviticus, when you present sacrifices, in order to present a sacrifice, what do you need to do first? To check yourself. Because if you go without checking yourself, it's not good for anything. What is the idea? That we have learned from the scriptures. That everything starts by God coming to you, showing who you really are, and then you return that and turn your ways back to Him. Without that changing, that introspection, there is nothing that is available to us. Because that is the simple way. God is merciful. God can destroy us in a second, but He's constantly giving the opportunity to come back. Now you say, why you're talking about this? Joseph. Joseph could immediately, in a moment of a great anger, saw his 10 brothers then smiling and bowing. You know, I step on you and destroy you. Look at what you're trying to do to And totally the contrary, at the end, his brothers still, when his father died, and they went back to Israel to bury him, and they come back. What is interesting here is that the brothers, they come back, and they were checking their pants. In spite of everything that already Jacob has told them, including Judah, they were checking their pants because now the father is dead, and now what Joseph is going to do to us. And when they say, and they beg and say, and they say something that I don't know if Jacob said or didn't say, because we never knew through the scriptures that Jacob knew what his other children did to Joseph. We never knew that. But they come and say, before our father died, he said that you needed to forgive us. You know, very eloquent looking. And what happened to Joseph? He cried again. He breaks his heart. Because his brother still, even though they have been forgiven, they couldn't accept forgiveness of their own brother. Let me make this call to all of us in this time of light. The scripture says there is no one person who doesn't commit a sin. But God has ample mercy. He is the most gracious of all in anything that we can imagine. And He is ready to forgive us. But we need to give this step. And you know what? I have discovered with the time. The problem is not sometimes to be forgiven. Because how many times we have been forgiven? The problem is not to be forgiven. The problem is you can forgive yourself. This is the greatest problem that many of us we struggle. How many of us we say, I am good for nothing, I don't deserve anything, I don't need anything, God already has forgotten me, or He doesn't want anything from me. Totally the contrary. When God gives you the opportunity to come back, it's because He's giving you the opportunity to renew yourself, and to become totally a new person. For this festival of lights, will be light to all of us and all the other religions that they celebrate this time of the year. Goodwill for the men and for everybody in this world. That we can shake hands and we can desire to each other the best, to try to make this humanity better, even though we are living in very perilous times. You know, when our Messiah Yeshua said, pray for your enemies, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, because many of them, they have been deviated, or many of them, they have been deceived. And that what we are asking is that they can see the light too. Because once they see the light, they will change. May the Lord bless all of us and bless this time of the year. Hanukkah Sameach.